Within this current modern era of Resident Evil that we find ourselves in, there are two games that I see getting brought up the most as being the best Resident Evil games, at least in the modern era, and that's Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake. And it's really no surprise that these games have done as well as they have and are highly regarded like they are, because the games that they were based off of, the original Resident Evil 2 and the original Resident Evil 4, are also considered to be some of the best in the franchise, very highly regarded games. So it would make natural sense that the remakes of these games are also held in that high regard. So I thought it would be fun to make a video where I compared RE2 with RE4, look at the gameplay and the story, and not really decide which one is better, but just kind of look at the strengths and weaknesses of both games. So, let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it. Let's start with discussing the core gameplay of each game. Obviously, the gunplay feels very similar across both games, same engine, so that's to be expected. RE4 brings back some of the weapons from RE2, like Leon's classic handgun Matilda and the shotgun, although I should point out, in RE2, you need to seek out the custom parts for the shotgun, so it's not exactly the same. While these games might look and even feel the same on the surface, the overall gameplay is much different when it comes to the approach to combat. RE4 throws packs, even hordes of enemies at you all at once, but it also gives you a variety of tools to deal with these enemies. You got your handgun, you got your knife, you got your kicks and the suplex, all of those crazy moves Leon can do. Sure, you start the game with just a handgun and a knife, but you quickly find a shotgun in the village square, and not too much later, meet the merchant, and from there things pretty well become a bullet bonanza. Compare this to Resident Evil 2, where the only effective means of taking down zombies is your guns. I suppose you could say the knife can be effective in certain situations, but it's nowhere near the powerhouse of the RE4 knife. But the biggest thing that separates RE2's combat from RE4 is that engaging in combat is the last thing you want to do. Zombies don't drop ammo and other items like the Ganados do. In RE2, every bullet counts, whereas in RE4, I'll empty a clip just to see that sexy reload animation Leon does. That's not to say that conserving ammunition is not a part of RE4's gameplay at all, but it really only applies to the more powerful weapons, the type of weapons you only pull out when it's time to get shit done. So, in this sense, RE2's gameplay could be described as more thoughtful than RE4's. It's generally good to approach situations with a plan in mind. I'm going to go through this hallway, throw a flashbang here, get the key item there, and exit through there. It feels really good when things go exactly as planned in this game. The problem is that often things do not go according to plan. It's really easy to back yourself into a corner. Now, let's look at Resident Evil 4. Having a plan for how you want to tackle a scenario is certainly something you can do, but here's the catch. In RE2, having one thing go wrong in your plan will usually mean wasting a knife to avoid a zombie, or wasting a first aid spray to heal some damage. In RE4, everything is going wrong all the time. Heads are exploding with plagas, the ground will be engulfed with flames, Ganados will grab you from behind. The combat is so unpredictable and chaotic that going in with a plan is useless because it will become derailed almost immediately. Not to say that Resident Evil 2 doesn't have a level of unpredictability to it as well. The point that I'm trying to make is that the gameplay of each game is very different, which most people seem to already know. So why am I explaining this? I'll tell you why. Because I believe that these two games have the best gameplay and combat systems in the entire franchise. And while I haven't played every single Resident Evil game out there, I have played a fuck ton of them. And even though these two games are very different, and I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, in fact, I would say that both styles of gameplay have their place within the franchise. RE2 has that slow, thoughtful, and tension-filled gameplay that resonated with so many people back in the PlayStation days, whereas Resident Evil 4 has that action-packed, unpredictable, and chaotic gameplay that brought in a whole new crowd of fans. I think the RE4 remake does a good job of providing a more survival horror-like experience in a lot of ways than the original game does. But at the end of the day, RE4 is and always has been and will always be a shooting gallery, whereas RE2 is a tried and true old school survival horror experience. And again, I think both styles of gameplay have their place in the franchise. So let's switch gears and start talking about the stories from each game. Now, when it comes to Resident Evil plots, I'm not gonna pretend like they're anything too deep or complex or anything like that. We're dealing with some pretty surface level stuff here, at least most of the time we are. The bad guys are the bad guys because they're the bad guys. The plot is mainly just there to provide context for what's going on. In fact, OG Resident Evil 4 is played as a complete joke the entire time. However, there are certain fundamentals of storytelling that every story, regardless of how complex they are, should follow. And for the most part, Resident Evil games do a good job at following these fundamentals. Now with that said, let's take a look at RE2's story. So Leon S. Kennedy is a rookie police officer late for work on his first day. On his way into Raccoon City, he meets up with Claire Redfield, and the two notice that the citizens of Raccoon City seem a little itchy tasty these days. Not long after entering the city, Leon and Claire get separated, but they both end up making their way to the police station. Leon meets up with Ada, Claire meets up with Sherry, they encounter Tyrant and William Birkin, Chief Irons is a necrophiliac rapist. I'm not going to go over every detail, rather I'd like to focus specifically on Leon and Ada, as I think the remake does a very good job at giving us this awesome dynamic between the two. Ada is very cold and calculating. For her, the mission comes first before anything, and everything else is just an obstacle in her way. Until she meets Leon Kennedy, who is basically the polar opposite of Ada. He wears his heart on his sleeve and wants nothing more than to protect those in need. He's so goddamn heroic that he's kind of an idiot and will jump in front of a bullet for someone that he just met. I think the Leon and Ada dynamic is captured perfectly in the Kendo scene. Ada very cold-heartedly says that they must terminate Kendo's daughter, to where Leon steps in to say, "Hey, maybe we should just let them be," to which Ada then backs down. Leon Kennedy is the only person capable of bringing out Ada's humanity. It's why Ada is constantly saving Leon, even though she has no real reason to. You could say that Ada was just using Leon the whole time, but I would point you towards this incredible final scene between Leon and Ada. I mean, this scene really says it all. Ada acts like that cold-hearted killer she seems to be, but Leon channels his inner Chad energy and calls her bluff. It's a great way to get people excited to see these two meet again in RE4. And speaking of RE4, let's start talking about the story of RE4. Ever since Leon has survived the Raccoon City incident, he has been getting extensive training as a government agent, and his first assignment is to rescue the president's daughter who's been kidnapped. Well, that's quite a first mission. Oh, and by the way, Leon, we're going to send you in with no backup, and all we're going to give you is a pistol and a knife. Good luck, asshole. Seriously, were they trying to kill Leon? Is this an attempt to cover up the Raccoon City incident by eliminating all of the survivors? Actually, that'd be a pretty cool plot twist. Anyway, Leon gets to the village, shit starts going down. You guys know the story, I don't need to explain it. Let's just get to the part everybody wants to hear about. Ada Wong. I have never seen a fan base turn against a character so quickly and so aggressively before. We're talking about one of the most popular female characters in the entire video game industry here. It's crazy to see almost everybody unanimously agree that Ada Wong sucks in this game. A lot of people are quick to say that this was because of the voice performance. Now, I think complaining about voice acting in Resident Evil is a little absurd because it's fucking Resident Evil.
What happened?
It's worse than... We can't. You must be careful, Rebecca. The forest is full of zombies and monsters.
zombies and monsters.
That being said, I kinda hate Ada Wong in this game. Despite the fact that we get more dialogue between Leon and Ada, it never seems like they have the same dynamic they did in RE2. Leon comes off as really bitter towards Ada, which is not really fitting for his character. It's like, dude, you ever been through a breakup before? Get over it. And Ada, dear lord, Ada sucks in this game. At one point, Ada tells Leon that he should leave Ashley behind. What the fuck? Yes, Ada, let's leave Ashley behind so she could be tortured and mind controlled by a crazy cult and sent to the US to infiltrate and destroy the government, effectively taking over the entire country and by extension taking over the world. Great fucking idea, Ada. I get that Ada was a little cold-hearted, but she's not a fucking psychopath. Ada also doesn't seem to have any involvement in the story. Like, remember in the original game, you would find files talking about this unconfirmed third party that's sort of fucking up shit with the Los Illuminados' plans? I mean, I always assumed they were talking about Ada. You know, we also got this scene where Ada was talking with Krauser, and that kind of shows you more about her and Krauser. In the remake, she just kind of shows up, says some boring shit, and leaves. So yeah, it should be pretty obvious at this point that I much prefer RE2's story to RE4. The RE4 remake was honestly set up from the beginning to fail. The original game's story is really a product of its time. The game is full of these campy tropes that in any other story would be annoying as fuck.
Maybe it's about time you told me the reason why you're here.
Maybe some other time.
But they work in RE4 because the whole game is a joke. So that brings us to the end of the video. Again, I'm not trying to say that one of these games is necessarily better than the other. I love both of these games, and I love both of them for different reasons. And as I said before, I think both styles of gameplay have their place within the franchise. Although, when it comes to the story, it's pretty clear that I just much prefer RE2's story to RE4. I'd really like to see some more Claire Redfield in future Resident Evil games. I feel like she hasn't really gotten the spotlight as much as other characters have. Let's see a Code Veronica remake. I know there's tons of Resident Evil fans out there that want to see a Code Veronica remake, myself included. I love Code Veronica, and Code Veronica actually has one of the better stories in the whole franchise. Maybe in the future I'll make a video about Code Veronica. I've always kind of wanted to do that. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.